Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear brothers and sisters. Today we are going to explore a deeply thoughtful and important question that touches many hearts and homes. Can you perform Qurbani for a non-Muslim family member? This topic is layered with spiritual significance, legal boundaries, and heartfelt intentions that deserve clarity from the light of the Quran, Sunnah, and the wisdom of our beloved scholars. Imagine for a moment the story of Prophet Ibrahim, who was willing to sacrifice his son purely for the love of Allah and obedience to his command, a sacrifice meant to strengthen faith and submission, not just an act of giving meat. The entire essence of Qurbani revolves around intention, niyya, and submission to Allah's command. Allah says in the Quran, "It is neither their meat nor their blood that reaches Allah, but it is piety from you that reaches Him." Surah Al-Hajj 22:37. This verse tells us that Qurbani is a sacred act linked directly to our taqwa and devotion, not just a social or family gesture. Now, when we consider performing Qurbani for a non-Muslim family member, we enter the space where fiqh, Islamic jurisprudence, and spiritual intentions meet. Scholars have carefully examined this and concluded that the sacrifice must be intended for a Muslim who will either benefit spiritually or materially from it in accordance with Islamic law. The reason is that Qurbani is an act of worship, and worship must be directed to Allah with sincere intention. Giving meat as a gift to anyone, including non-Muslims, is permissible and encouraged to build bridges of kindness and respect, but performing the sacrifice as a Qurbani for a non-Muslim, meaning the act is dedicated to them, is not valid in the eyes of Islamic law. Reflect on the story of the Prophet and the companions. Their sacrifices were acts of obedience to Allah, meant to renew their faith and trust in Him. When Bilal, the beloved companion, gave charity or shared food, it was an act rooted in faith. The Prophet also said, "Actions are judged by intentions," reminding us that how and why we perform an act of worship shapes its acceptance. The intention behind Qurbani must be for Allah alone, and the sacrifice should be for a Muslim or for the sake of Allah's pleasure. Now, here comes the emotional and personal layer. What if your beloved non-Muslim family member is close, and you want to share this blessing with them? You can certainly share the meat of your Qurbani with them as a gift of kindness and love without making the act itself a sacrifice on their behalf. This distinction is vital. The act of sacrifice is for Allah and intended for Muslims, while sharing the blessing can extend to anyone, including non-Muslims. This approach beautifully embodies the Prophet's example of generosity and compassion. He showed kindness and generosity to all people around him, Muslims and non-Muslims alike. The Quran instructs us, "And worship Allah and associate nothing with Him, and to parents do good, and to relatives, orphans, the needy, the near neighbor, the neighbor farther away." Surah An-Nisa 4:36. So, the door of kindness is wide open, but the worship remains dedicated to Allah alone. Have you ever paused to ask yourself why this boundary exists? It safeguards the purity of our worship and keeps the meaning of Qurbani intact as a submission to Allah's command, not as a social favor or a gift wrapping of religious rites. This is a profound reminder that while Islam teaches us to be merciful and respectful to all humanity, it also calls us to maintain the sanctity of our acts of worship. So, brothers and sisters, how can we honor our non-Muslim loved ones with the spirit of Eid without compromising our faith? By sharing the meat from our sacrifice generously, inviting them to meals with kindness, and embodying the mercy and compassion that our Prophet showed to everyone, regardless of their beliefs. This is where dawah is lived, not only through words but through sincere actions that reflect Allah's mercy. Before we conclude, reflect on the beautiful balance Islam teaches us, holding firm to the pillars of our faith while reaching out with open hearts to those around us. The Prophet's life was a perfect example of this balance, deeply rooted in tawhid and submission to Allah, yet infinitely compassionate towards humanity. In the end, our Qurbani is a personal and communal act of worship, a reminder of our connection to Allah and the community of believers. The scholars remind us that intentions purify our deeds, and the Prophet said, "The most beloved deeds to Allah are those done consistently, even if small." Bukhari and Muslim. Let your Qurbani be a means to purify your heart, strengthen your faith, and build bridges of kindness in your family and community, while keeping the act itself devoted to Allah alone. May Allah guide us all to fulfill our duties with sincerity and wisdom, and bless our families with understanding and love. Jazakum Allahu khairan for joining me on this heartfelt reflection. If this discussion enlightened you or touched your heart, please share it with others who might benefit. May Allah accept our sacrifices, increase our piety, and make us among those who act with both faith and compassion. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.